Welcome to the Father on Purpose podcast, featuring author and ministry leader Kent Evans and business executive and military veteran Lawson Brown. This is a show for you, Dad. You want to be a godly and intentional father. Unfortunately, you've turned to these two knuckleheads for help. Let us know how that works out for you. Before we begin, remember this: you are not a father on accident. So go be a father on purpose. Please welcome your hosts, Kent and Lawson.
Hey guys, welcome to the Father on Purpose podcast. And you get another gift that Lawson and I give you every so often. And it's the gift of us not talking very much. So you are welcome because today we have a special guest. Let me introduce our special guest and then we'll get to know him a little better. We're joined today by Trail Life CEO, Mark Hancock. And I met Mark for the first time, it's been about 7 or 8 years ago now, as their ministry began and Mark was taking over. And we were a ministry partner, and I got to know Mark really well. He's been to my house. He's spoken at our events. I've spoken at his events. He's sat on my back deck and let my kids fire questions at him. And what a tremendous individual. I've really enjoyed running alongside Mark in the ministry world and watching Trail Life just explode onto the scene and do amazing work. So Mark, thanks a ton for joining us today, man. I really appreciate it.
Ken, it's great to be here. And actually, we met before that. We met sooner than that because I was with Trail Life from the beginning, just like you were. So it's like I came along.
Is it that long ago?
Met you. Yeah, so it'll be 10 years next year. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary next year. So 2013 is probably, I'm guessing we met on the phone. And then I'm guessing that in 2014, when we began to go out into the field and do events. I think that's where you and I met in personal at a trail leader training, we used to call them back then.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Time flies.
It's been wonderful getting to know you. Love your ministry. Love the work that you're doing, the difference you're making in the life of fathers. That's important work. And I just love you. You're my brother in the Lord. You're a little bit goofy. And so we work. We fit.
That's an upgrade.
Thanks for saying that, Mark. It was already good to meet you, but now I know how much on the same page we are.
Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. About 10 minutes with Kent and you can right in. It's just not a normal person.
This guy needs help. I find myself surrounded by a lot of friends, and then I realize I don't think they're friends. I think they're here to check on me. I think they've all been called to the same mission field.
We're here just to see what's going to
happen. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, give us the Mark Hancock profile, wife, kids, favorite ice cream flavor, whatever you want to share.
Wow. Okay. Married to Michelle. I'm going to be 34 years in December. I had the greatest experience, and I haven't talked to her about this yet because I'm not sure how to bring this up. But we were talking with someone the other day, and she said, we're going to be married for 33 years in December. And I'm just kind of thinking, okay, that may not be right. And I don't, I don't know if most husbands have this experience, but normally I'm getting the number wrong. And so she said 33, and I'm doing the math in my head. I'm thinking it's actually 34. And so I'm so excited.
That's a great number.
I got it right, So 34 years in December, and looking forward to correcting my wife on that because I've never had the privilege of doing this. She always gets that right. 34 years in December. We have 2 boys, Luke and Logan. Luke is graduate of Liberty University. He's his second year teaching at a Christian Classical Academy in Atlanta. Loves it. He was a philosophy major, so the fact that he has a job is thrilling for us.
Yeah, wow.
He's the one. He's the one.
And actually, he's just doing a great job. He was raised classically, and so he's the first teacher at that academy who was raised classically and then became a teacher. And so he's actually kind of a rock star because the other teacher's like, okay, how do we do this? Because classical education, a lot of times they're taking a traditional model and they have to retrain those people to teach classically. So he was raised classically. So it's a really cool thing. He's loving it. He's a rock star. Logan is our younger son. He is a junior at Liberty University and majoring in business. He will rock it. I've known since before he was born that, and praying about this boy before he arrived, I felt like the Lord said, he is going to do something that hasn't been done.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
and I haven't figured out the interpretation on that. Like, does that mean like at the time it hadn't been done? Like I can't tell you the career he's going to have, because that career, it's like if a kid was born in 1920 and they said, oh, he's going to be a computer software designer. You're like, what the heck is that? So, so I don't know if it's like that kind of thing, like something that at the time of his birth, an industry that didn't exist,
Right.
or whether he's going to do something for the first time. And I just believe that about him.
Are you seeing signs of like some extra creativity or some, kind of strain toward leaning in a certain direction?
He is, I mean, it was crazy that the Lord said that I felt that impression, because that's just who he is. This is the kid that when he was, 8 years old, my wife and I went out on a walk. We lived on a circle that was a mile around. And so we went out on a walk and we came home, and he said, we have an appointment on Thursday at 5:30. He's 8 years old.
He said appointment?
With who? With the hockey coach. All right, we live in Florida. And so Logan, help. He said, well, I saw this thing where they have ice hockey. Now, we've never been to the skating rink. Never. Kids never been on ice skates. He says, but I called and they have this hockey class and they give you all the stuff for free, because apparently the Hockey Association is investing in the next generation of hockey players. And they're on a search for who's the next Wayne Gretzky or whatever. And Logan figured that's who it was. So
he was 8? 8.
And so we go to the hockey thing, and the coach says, we talked with your son, so, and they put him in pads and everything. So he had 8 weeks of once a week doing hockey. Now, after 8 weeks, he was done, but that's Logan. He throws himself into something that he's never done, and he becomes the expert on it. And then when he's the expert on it, he's just kind of done at that point. It's like, I did that. So it's really easy to believe that this is the kind of kid who's just like, I can do that. I mean, we're in Florida. Who does ice hockey? We had never been to a game. I'd never watched a game. And this was the year that the Tampa Bay team, that has a name.
Is it the Lightning?
Yes, there we go. Tampa Bay Lightning was in the Super Bowl.
Or the Stanley Cup, whatever.
Stanley Cup, yes.
Keeping guys oriented.
Florida, right? So, and we watched that. It's like,
Did they score a touchdown?
You paid close attention.
Well, we didn't have a TV at the time, didn't have cable, didn't have any of that stuff. And so we drug a TV out of a closet or something, stuck an antenna to it, and watched. Couldn't actually see the puck, but we watched this whole game. And because Logan was into hockey, and he rallied the whole family to be into hockey and told us everything that was going on in the game. That's just Logan.
Wow.
And my two sons, they're best friends. They've always, growing up, they always shared a room, and we told them that they always would, and that really drove them to be close. They're different personalities. But they introduce each other as their best man. So like when they're together, they're like, hey, this is Luke. This is my best man, Luke. And Luke will say, this is my best man, Logan. So they introduce each other as the best man. So they have this wonderful relationship, incredibly different, philosophy major, business major. Picture one wants to play Settlers of Catan all the time. The other one wants to play, Texas Hold'em. So just, just very different. One is into fashion and what's cool and the newest thing, and the other one is into Marvel Universe or whatever. Just very, very different, and but they just love each other dearly, and they really help each other along. They're complementary to each other.
So, Mark, I want to get to your book, and I want to get to Trail Life. But before we do, because of what you just said, let's just camp here for a minute. A lot of dads are on listening to this podcast, and they have kids who are very different from each other. And they have one, just like you, they may have 2 kids or 6, and they have all these different personalities, these different bents and orientations, and what they like, what they don't like. How did you and Michelle kind of navigate those waters when you saw they were kind of wired a little differently? Sometimes that can create sibling rivalry, or that can create a lot of tension in the home. It sounds like you guys navigated it in a way where they learned to appreciate those differences or something, because now they're great friends in their 20s. How did you guys navigate that?
I wish I had done it intentionally. Because that's something I would love to write about, because, Michelle and I talk about it all the time. So how do we get two boys who are just so amazing? And I don't know the secret sauce, except that we organically did some certain things that it's, I don't want to propose that this would work anywhere. You know what I mean? It worked for us. So that's why I'm kind of, you can tell I'm kind of hemming and hawing around this question.
Because we're not looking, you and I talked before the show started. This is not the fatherhood advice column. This is this is a look into Mark Hancock's life and what you guys did. So
all right, then let me answer
disclaimers aside.
Yeah, don't
results
try
may
this.
vary. Right.
Don't
results
do this
may
at
vary.
Home. Some of the things that we did that helped them discover common interests. And this is a piece of advice that I'm going to give unsolicited. Luke was born a reader. Our older son, the philosophy major, you can imagine he was born a reader. Before he could walk, you could put a toy, and you could put a stack of books, and he would crawl over, pick up a book, crawl over, sit in your lap, and open it up and begin to turn the pages. He was a born reader. He's a voracious reader. He reads everything. He's a lot smarter than I am. He's read everything. Logan didn't have that, but they shared a room. And so what we did is our boys were allowed to stay up as late as they wanted to, which on the playground is like you're king. It's like, what's your bedtime? I don't have one. I mean, you're the guy. You're like the dude. My parents let me stay up as late as I want to. All the parents are like, dude, they're so irresponsible. My sons are like, yeah, I'm rocking it. Well,
as your kid is rolling his mustache on the playground, stay up as late as I need to.
Stay up as late as I want. So they were like, as long as they were reading. So you're allowed to stay up as late as you want to, as long as you are reading. And that was huge. Now, from a health standpoint, as a responsible parent, your kid isn't going to be able to stay awake longer than his body should physically stay awake. And so we would go in, Luke would still be reading. Logan would be asleep with the book on his face. We take the book off his face and cover him up. But they're reading the same books, and they're handing them back and forth. And so they developed this language around authors that they liked, stories that they liked, things that they held in common. So that created a bond in them because they were reading the same things. Now, I remember Luke coming in one night about 3:00 in the morning. You ever wake up with somebody standing next to your bed and you get that adrenaline drop?
Oh, yeah.
It was Luke saying, "Can I turn out my light now?" Like, yeah, of course you can.
Oh my gosh, get out of here. Yeah. It's worse with little girls because their hair is hanging all down in their face and they're just staring.
Yeah. So it did lead to things like that. Or another time when I went in and said, Luke, you should probably go to sleep now because we're getting up early in the morning. He said, "Can I read one more psalm?" It's like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Where'd these kids come from?
Yeah. So reading was a big deal. And so they shared that. So take that truth and maybe, okay, I'm moving over to giving advice. Maybe that truth in another way where you find the things that they can share together. They were also they really enjoyed Teen Pact. And Teen Pact is a government leadership school for teens. They both were very involved in that for different reasons. Luke, because he liked the debate. He liked a lot of smart kids, a lot of speech and debate kids go to that. It's a lot of homeschool kids, kids who are drawn to government and those sorts of things. But there's also really a cool factor to it. They have a great worship services, and they have elections. And so there's some bit of the popularity element. So the boys were drawn to it for different reasons, but they both ended up going very far in in Team Pack. My older son was governor of the state of Florida. Logan was a senator, Team Pack National. They have a national convention. So they both went really. Logan was a program director, and so he traveled to, I think, 9 different states putting Team Pack events together. And when he was 19 years old, which was really crazy, he'd fly into a town. They give him 30 or 40 high school volunteers. He'd train them up. 300, 400 kids show up the next day. He'd run it for a week, and then he got on a plane, go to the next city, and do it all over again.
Wow.
Amazing experience for him. So they both bonded around Team Pack. That was kind of their thing also. So I think that you, as parents, you pay attention to those things. We paid attention to those things. Anything that they saw that was attractive to them or and good, we went all in on. So things like hockey, if he said he wanted to do it, we're there. We didn't do the things they didn't want to do. But we when they would discover something that was positive, like Team Pact or hockey, or they did the Lego robotics kind of thing, good group of kids, good families, good opportunities, any opportunity we had to put them around things that they wanted to do that was good for them, we went all in as a family. We didn't go down the sports road because it was just like, we tried that, it was just like, it's kind of a mix of what you're going to get there in terms of character development and the language being used or the examples of the adults or the kids. So we exposed them to things that we thought were good. And when they embraced them or leaned a little bit, we went all in. And a lot of times they shared the interest in those things. That's a really long answer to your question.
Well, so I know Lawson has a question, but before, so Mark, if I were the soccer coach at the league, would you let your kids play for me as a soccer coach?
If you were the soccer coach of the league, it would be a really weird league. Let's start there. It would be like, I don't know, maybe more like foosball.
Is that a short joke?
Hey, take it.
If the short shoe fits.
No, if I showed up and you were the coach of the foosball league, we would stay.
We would, if nothing else, somebody's going to have to call the cops.
Yeah.
We would stay because we know there has to be some adult supervision.
Lawson, over to you.
Yeah. Hey, I want to pivot some. So far, you have not mentioned trail life, and I this is not what I expected, and I like it, Mark. But the reason I say it's not what I expected is because I figured, most of your answers are going to be somewhere around, me and my boys spent time in the woods, and we were out doing, community projects and whatnot. Maybe you did, but I'm always curious when we talk to guys like you, the founder of Trail Life, which I've done some research, and man, I just want to tell you on a personal level, I want to do something. Like, I want to get involved. I love it. But part of the reason is, like, I'm not worried because I know God is ultimately in control, but I do notice, and I don't like that, like, our country has lost some grounding in manliness, that manliness is okay. And I've got a PDF here that I want to read the opening couple of sentences to you and get you to talk about what's the origin story, and does this have something to do with that? Because it struck a chord with me, dude. I think this is perfectly said. You wrote, "A rising tide of cultural transition has been drowning the values of masculinity over the past few decades. It seems that tide is advancing even more quickly now, increasingly the traditional role of man as provider, protector, leader, creator, and warrior." And it's noteworthy that you put that word in there. Provider, protector, leader, creator, and warrior is discounted. And bro, I believe that is happening. I believe to a large degree it is on purpose, and I do not believe that it is of God. And so I applaud you first. Thank you for creating Trail Life and all that's gone, that over the past however long decade has come of it. I applaud you and I appreciate it. My daughters are 24, 21, and as they've dated around here and there, dude, I got to tell you, it's not been easy for them to find a guy that is representative of some of the values and the strengths and the things that they have found attractive. And I don't want to say it's like this like culture of wimpiness, but I'm going to stop here in just a second, get you to reflect on what, that opening paragraph. But I also noted you wrote some things in here that I believe, but nowadays you just can't say. Like people go, you can't say that. And here's 3 of them: eroding generational values and norms, gender blurring, fails to allow for the differences between boys and girls, and then participation trophies, no score games, deprive boys of opportunities to be competitive and develop empathy by identifying with the loser. And that's something that, if you say that out loud, people are like, bro, you can't say that kind of stuff nowadays. Well, I applaud you. You're saying it. I'm with you. I'm going to repeat it. And I believe in what you're doing. But talk about the origin story first, how your family participated. I'd love to hear that. And then kind of like talk about the why behind it all.
Wow, Allison. You're taking this in a different direction, and I'm okay with that. But in order to talk about these, I know one of the intentions of your show today was just to get personal, and there are some very personal things that I can say, about trail life and challenge men to a call that's bigger than they are and to make a difference in a generation. But we're leaving my personal life, so I hope that's okay. But so draw me back if you need to, because you said a lot, and I can talk literally for hours about what it is that you've just said. But let me give you a correction. I didn't start Trail Life. We don't point to a founder. We had 300 volunteers across the country are gathered together. In 2013, when it appeared that the Boy Scouts were abandoning their traditional values. And in fact, that is what happened. And then about every 2 years, they went another step towards kind of distancing themselves from their Christian heritage. And so at that time, about 300 volunteers across the country said, we need to do something about this because churches will not be able to charter Boy Scout troops at some point. I believe we've passed that point, but I also believe that Boy Scouts has such a tremendous legacy that I don't know that churches have totally woken up to the sense that, okay, this isn't the Boy Scouts that I know. It'll create problems for churches because churches that are aligning with the organization that doesn't agree with their biblical values and actually disagrees with their biblical values can cause a church problems in terms of their 501c3 status. Because if you have a definition of marriage for your church, that's a man and a woman, but you charter an organization that has a different definition, you can actually be challenged on how strongly you believe that. And so somebody can walk in the door and say, we want you to marry us. And they may not fit your picture of marriage, but you have no defense because you've already compromised on that. And that will be what you have in the court of law. You don't really believe your values. So in that, we knew the effect it would have on the church. And so that's what Trail Life was birthed out of. Now we're almost 10 years old. We're coming up on 45,000 members in all 50 states. About 950 churches have Trail Life USA troops. So it's what you expect from Boy Scouts, handbooks, uniforms, patrols, all those sorts of things. But we are Christ-centered and boy-focused. And so when you talk about those dangerous things that we say, we're unapologetically Christian. We're not an outdoor organization that's having a Christian experience. We're at our core a ministry that uses the outdoors to turn boys into godly men. Now,
love it.
I can say this. I don't have a Boy Scout background. When you ask about my sons and why didn't you talk about that, my sons were in Boy Scouts. I was just a dad who sat in the back of the room. My older son was an Eagle Scout. When he transferred over to Trail Life, he achieved our highest award, the Freedom Ranger Award. Oh, I wondered. But it really wasn't that was something that I loved doing with my sons. But it was easy to make the shift to Trail Life because it was in line with our values. It was a difficult conversation to have with my sons at the time when they were 11 and 13, sit down and tell them, this is why we can't do Boy Scouts anymore. when he was on the cusp of getting his Eagle. We did allow him to complete his Eagle Scout before the Boy Scouts made the change. We had a warning that they're going to make the change, and so he got his Eagle the month before they brought in the first of their membership. In fact, the highest month for Eagle awards in Boy Scouts in recent history was December of 2013, because January 1st, 2014 is when they launched the new membership standards.
Yeah,
a bunch of boys pushed through
before the curtain fell.
Yeah, it was.
In fact, Mark, can I just tell a brief story about you personally? That's one of the reasons why I loved trail life from the moment I met you, even though I've clearly forgotten how long ago it was. We went to an event, a trail leader conference in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. And I remember because the building was an odd building. It was like a depot of some kind where they stored like salt and stuff for the winter. And so we were there and we were just attending as guests. And I had, I think, 3 of my sons with me. And Lawson, I remember Mark getting up, and I hadn't met Mark yet. We didn't know each other. And I'm at this event. I kind of don't know what's going on. And Mark said something like, and Mark, you can feel free to correct me. I'll paraphrase. He said, hey, we're all headed down this path and we're starting together. So let's make sure we're kind of aligned as we get out of the gate here. Trail Life is not a camping organization. We're not an outdoors organization. We're a discipleship organization. And then you went on to say something like, and again, correct my interpretation, but you said something like, if you have young men in your troop who attain the Freedom Ranger Award and they don't know Christ as their savior, we want to look at whether we're doing it right. And it just was this moment. I remember looking at my 3 boys who were old enough to know what was going on. And I went, I like this guy. Like, I was like, when you said stuff like that, I thought, man, I got to meet this guy. And I just remember from the beginning, and I know you won't point to the founder, but your influence has been dramatic and significant, as it should have been, as the leader, the public face for sure. And man, I just applaud you for starting off that way and for pointing people to this discipleship relationship and this intentionality for Christ. Amen. And it's one of the reasons why I've loved being a partner with you guys forever, is because you're not just trying to like kind of do your thing in what you guys do for a living in your ministry. You're really focused on Christ and discipleship and families. And I just applaud you for that, man. And I've loved you since that first public speech you gave, where I became a Mark Hancock fan that day, big time. Hey, Lawson, have you ever wondered, how are you doing as a dad? Have you ever thought that?
All the time.
We know, we're dads, you and me. We know that is a constant challenge for dads, is how am I doing? So what we built was the Godly Father Quiz. It's a 28-question, totally free online tool. You can go and take the survey and figure out where are you now and where you want to go next. How does that sound, Lawson?
It sounds great. I've done it, and it was very helpful. I love it. Dad,
right now, pull over, put down your Coca-Cola, get off of the internet. No, wait a minute. Go back to the internet. Go to manhoodjourney.org/quiz, Q-U-I-Z, manhoodjourney.org/quiz, and take the free, totally free Godly Father assessment today so you can know how you're doing as a dad and where you need to grow and improve.
Well, thanks. And that is important to us. And that Christ-centered thing and the boy-focused thing, those get you in trouble in this culture. We actually believe that boys and girls are different, and we think that it's not a value statement. It's a statement that they're just different. And so Boy Scouts doesn't believe that anymore. They left that space wide open. They believe that if you deliver the same program to boys and girls, you're gonna have success. We just think boys and girls are different, and so that's not a popular thing to say. I had a staff member remind me that the day he's been with us, I think 6 years. He says, "Do you remember our interview?" I'm like, "No."
What did I do? What did I do?
He said it's always stuck out to me. He said he had come from Boy Scouts. He was on the Boy Scouts staff at some point, and he left Boy Scouts over the decision, and he sought out the position with Trail Life. And he said, "How do I know you're not going to?" Because he was heartbroken. Betrayed. How do I know you're not going to go down the same path?
Wow, great question.
It was a great question. And I said, well, here's what we know about Boy Scouts. is they weren't forced to make their decision. A lot of people think that they were forced to make their decision. They weren't. They had a Supreme Court ruling in their favor. And this is for dads, okay? I said, they stuck their finger in the air and said, where's culture going? We want to be at the cool kids table. And that's why they forced these changes. When I say forced, the membership voted against the changes. They forced these changes so that they could be in the circles they wanted to be in. And I told him, you're joining an organization. Those guys, they'll be celebrated by a portion of our culture for these brave decisions they're making to fold to this cultural tide.
Right.
They'll be celebrated. They'll be congratulated. They'll be welcomed with open arms into this movement.
Yeah.
They will desecrate our graves, but we're all in. So, it's very unlikely that they will build a statue in the public square to recognize us for what it is that we've done. It's more likely that we will be burned at the stake there. And so, no, we're all in with this, understanding that that's the price that we're paying. When my son got his Eagle, and he moved over into Trail Life the next month and started working on his freedom arrangement, he got an email from the Boy Scouts. And dads, this is for you. This is how important this stuff is. The email said, hey, we noticed that you have not renewed your membership in Boy Scouts. Can you tell us why? And he said, Dad, should I respond? I said, that's up to you. They sent you the email. He was 14 years old. Is that, what do you want to do? He says, I think I want to answer. I said, okay, so pray about it and decide what you want to say. So a day or two later, he comes back and says, Dad, I'm preparing my response. Can I share it with you? I said, absolutely. And I'm thinking, philosophy major, I'm going to get a 10-page treatise, He gave him a 3-word answer that was a huge lesson for me as a father. He said to the Boy Scouts, you weren't brave.
Wow, dude.
And I thought, here is a young man who has given a number of years towards pursuing the highest award in an organization. It's a prestigious, difficult thing. The freedom arrangement is harder, but he went through this thing to get this award, but he's walking away because they weren't brave. So as a father, I need to understand how much my sons value courage. And as much as I think that they'll never walk away from me, I better be careful to know that I walk my life out in such a way that they will say, my dad is brave. I know that he's brave. So when you look at this, Lawson, this is circling back around to what it is that we're doing in this culture. And you talk about the things that we're saying as being unpopular. Okay, but what example am I showing to my sons? When we sat down and we enjoyed our Boy Scout troop, we love those people. They're homeschool families. We were like-minded with them. It was a Christian troop. We could have said, we're going to continue with this. But the church actually said, you can't. And I had to sit down with voices. We can't do this. This isn't who we are. And this was before Trail Life. And so we made that decision as a family before Trail Life. So these kind of things that I write about, Lawson, I know my boys are watching my life. And, if I'm compromising on the things that I believe the Word of God is saying, I could get an email from my son that said, you weren't brave.
Yeah. And, I would double down on what you're saying, Mark, and that you've set the foundation for him to be able to, when asked that question, to have that perspective, because he had seen you sit them down earlier on and set the tone and dig in your heels about your values. And so then when it came at him through the form of a question from them, he was prepared. You had prepared him for that. Now, man, I hope that the dads out there are hearing that you are setting a bold path, and it is okay to follow. It is okay to get on board with this and be counterculture. Kent and I have had some other episodes, like in fact on Father's Day, we said let's reverse the script on Father's Day and have it be not about the dads receiving, but what can we as dads do to redefine Father's Day as an opportunity to serve and to give to our family. And I think you are doing that for not just dads with sons. My early getting engaged with Kent through Manhood Journey, at first I was like, I don't have sons, but man, it's so important to me that my daughters find someone, and so that's why I've been able to come alongside with Kent and follow along, and I want to do it with Trail Life. Real quick, I also just want to applaud. This is a kind of a minor thing, but for the guys out there that are listening that may have, like me, have not come across Trail Life to this degree, your writing is really good. You're a great communicator, Mark, and so what kinds of things can dads find? Resources, books. I know you just released one. Talk about what tools there are for dads that are listening.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. That book that you read excerpts from, we just released, called Raising Godly Boys. It's a proven process for turning boys into godly men. It's a subtitle. And it's something that we've discovered in Trail Life. When we took apart why we're having the success that we're having, we said, what part of our process is proven that can be carried out and exported to other industries? Because our goal as a ministry to see boys turn into godly men. We happen to believe that the outdoors is the best way to do that in a male-centric environment. If there was another way to turn boys into godly men, I would be doing that. So, because like I said, I'm not the outdoors man. I was a youth pastor, mental health counselor, marriage and family therapist, raised 2 sons, foster parent. I've realized that this proven process that we're exercising in Trail Life USA is what I'm invested in. And the outdoors is and a male-centric environment is critical to carrying those things out. So the Raising Godly Boys is about that proven process. And then it talks about our culture, boys being unguided because we don't have the male mentorship model is gone. 1 in 4 boys don't have a father in the household. 80-something% of public school teachers are female. The Sunday school teachers are female. Boys don't have positive role models. Girls have wonderful role models of the single moms who are just knocking it out of the park and doing these Herculean tasks of raising a family on their own. So the daughters see a strong woman, and then they go to school and see a strong woman, and they go to Sunday school and see a strong woman. Boys don't have that kind of exposure. So they're unguided. They're ungrounded because of the principles, the absolute truths that we've taken out of their lives. They're unappreciated because we don't understand and we don't value the fact that boys and girls are different, that they learn different, they're biologically different, they develop different, they fall behind girls in every single academic category because we think that they can be taught the same. They can't. They have to be taught in a different way. That's why they're failing in school. That's why there's fewer boys going to college than girls, fewer boys getting master's degrees, doctoral degrees than girls, because we failed them in this area. We think that they're the same as girls. They're just not. And then the final thing is boys are largely uninspired. And you made some reference to that, the participation trophies, the let's not keep score. Boys need to know that there's something at stake before they'll get engaged. We look at the greatest generation, that went off and fought against tyranny, worldwide tyranny, and gave their lives for that. They had that purpose and they engaged in that because they saw the purpose and they saw there was something at stake. And then they came home from that battle and they threw themselves in another battle. They went to work, and the bullets there were high blood pressure and stress and all the heart disease and everything that they got from working really hard, because they were doing the same thing. They were saving the world from tyranny. Now they're providing for their family. And so, and they were glad to pay that price because there was something at stake. In the culture today, those things are largely taken away. And we take away from boys risk and competition. You put boy in a soccer game and tell them nobody's keeping score. It's like, why even try?
Right.
Or you tell them everybody's going to get a trophy. Why even try? And so that kind of culture we're raising boys in is failing them. And so we talk about how to address those four things: how to guide boys, how to ground boys, how to appreciate boys, how to inspire boys. And we talk about how that can be done in any organization. That's the solution that's the proven process for boys. Guide them, ground them, appreciate them, inspire them. And then and then we talk about in Trail Life how we intentionally address those four things, and it's built into our program. But it can be done. I've had soccer coach, I've had wrestling coaches, football coaches sit in on my workshops and say, man, I knew that stuff intuitively, but now you've given me a track to run on for how I can turn my team into a godly man. So the same things can be used in different areas, but in Trail Life, we think that we've got for us something that's really working, and it's vital for our society. Boys are not some kind of social disease that needs to be eradicated. They're not defective girls. They are they're an energy and a power and a wonderful and a marvelous thing in themselves that needs to be valued, and that's why we care about this proven process. And then get that book, Raising Godly Boys, at our website right now at traillifeusa.com, and then download it for free. And there's a couple other books on there also. Let Boys Be Boys. We talk about the biological differences between boys and girls, so that you can say, okay, this is true. Follow the science. Boys are different. And all that stuff is available for free right now at traillifeusa.com.
And I can echo that, Mark, in the sense, I want to say one more thing about Trail Life, and then I want to pivot back with a question for you to be personal towards a dad who's listening. The thing I would say about Trail Life is, having been, I would say, on the outside, but also pretty close to the inside, and that I know a lot of your staff, and I've known a lot of your leaders, and have spoken and traveled the country and met, a couple hundred people connected to Trail Life. You guys are doing an amazing work, and it is vital to what we're doing. And I love Trail Life. And as you've said before, trail men are the best men I know. And I've built some great friendships through guys throughout your network of amazing men leaders. And I often point people towards you. Like, I remember being on a radio show, and after, I got a bunch of contacts from single moms asking about, what do I do? What do I do? And I just said, hey, go find the nearest Trail Life troop. That's what I tell them, because it's a great place. It's a great environment. Let's talk though, in this context, in this podcast, you're talking to a lot of dads. You're talking to a specific dad. I don't know who he is. And so we're not talking to the deadbeat, disadvantaged, or the guy who doesn't want to do a good job. We're not trying to get him from, hey, do nothing to do something. We're trying to help this dad who's, currently mowing his lawn, or he's, on the treadmill. I want him to walk away from today's show with something practical that he can do. Not so much just as a next step. If you want to get involved with Trail Life, go to traillifeusa.com, call me, email me. I will get you connected any way you want. We will get you connected to Trail Life. Here's what I want to point out about your son's response to the Boy Scouts. He didn't pick quality, like bravery, out of thin air. In fact, that was one of the stated virtues and priorities of that organization. So that organization said, we stand for things like, and one of the things they said was bravery. So he didn't just pick out a random quality and say, you guys are out of budget. And he just, picked some random pet favorite quality of his. And here's what I want you to talk to a dad about. Dads, there is a dad listening who so badly wants to pass down certain qualities to his children, boys or girls. And that dad may or may not be modeling those particular virtues. And so he really wants his kids to be frugal, but he still gambles his money away. Or he really wants his kids to be sexually pure, but he's still chasing things he shouldn't. Let's talk for a moment to a dad who's listening, who wants to do it well, wants to do it right, about how important is it that we live out our stated values. I know none of us are perfect. I'm not asking you to trot out the Mark Hancock perfection resume of all you did right in the past. But what I am trying to do is, I think it's so important. Many dads believe their biggest problem is culture out there. And I would argue that's not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem is consistency in here. Is how I live out my faith in front of my kids is going to matter more than whatever some athlete tweets or some government decides. And so I want dads to feel like they have the power back, like they have the ability to positively affect their families if they would live out their stated values. Can you just talk about that? Feel free to disagree with me. You don't have to even agree, but talk about how important it is for us as fathers to live out our values in front of our kids.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. Well, first, I agree with you. You don't have to worry about that.
Whew, man, God, I was about to cut this thing off.
I read something the other day. I love reading Southern fiction, and there's a character. There's an author I like to read, and he always has a character in this thing who espouses this wisdom. And he was watching a man and his boy fish, and there was only one fishing pole, and so the guy who was sitting with him says, "Why do they only have one fishing pole?" And he said, "Because it's not about the fishing, it's about the boy." And so, the boy had the fishing pole because why isn't the dad fishing too? And so I would encourage dads to take that posture that sometimes the fishing isn't the important thing. And if you want to look back and be satisfied at what it is that you were able to do for yourself, and you lost your sons along the way, reflect on how that can be different if you focus on what it is that you can do for your sons. And no matter what it costs you don't get to hold the fishing rod. So there's something in there that picture of that is much deeper, and it's better expressed than the words that I'm using. But it really is about modeling the giving of a life for the next generation. We model Christ when we do that. So I think the best thing we can do as dads is do the best job that we can to parent our sons like God parents us. And so many of us don't have good examples of how we're parented. And so we either function out of that or we function in rebellion to that. And so we don't have models. And those same things I expressed about boys, men are unguided, men are ungrounded, men are unappreciated, men are uninspired. So I would encourage them to do the same thing that we do in Trail Life. Find some Christ-centered, male-focused, male-centric environments, because as a dad, accept the fact that you don't know what you're doing. And it's amazing when you come to that, when you wake up to that reality and you begin to hug God tighter, how he teaches you, how he parents you. And then you begin to lead out of that to where it's, his spirit flowing through you is doing something to you. And I wish I need to write about this, because I need to take these thoughts and kind of really discover the language for them, or craft the language for it. But there's something about lining yourself up as an imperfect vessel and letting him flow through you and parent your sons. When I disciplined my sons, the way I was disciplined was I was spanked, sent to my room to think about what it is that I had done. And so I'm getting a little off your subject, but I think I'm talking to a dad here, if that's okay. I was sent to my room to think about what it is that I had done. So I never knew when that was over. So my posture around my father was, am I still in trouble? Did I think about that long enough? Have I guilted myself sufficiently?
Right.
Am I
Wow.
fully?
Yeah.
exhibiting the shame that I should be carrying as a result, legitimate result of my consequences. I
Sure.
understand those consequences. So is this shame that I'm carrying the consequence of my behavior? And when do I lose that? Now, it wasn't until I met God that I realized, and it took me a while, because when I would sin, I had no idea if I was still in trouble with God
Right.
because of the example that I had from my father. Wonderful man. My dad was an amazing man, but he wasn't fathered. His parents were divorced, which was odd in the 1930s to not have a dad because your parents were divorced. So he was raised without a father. So he gets a pass. I get it. But so this is just one piece. And so in the discipline of my sons, they would be disciplined, and we would finish that moment with an embrace, usually one or both of us in tears, and a total restoration. And so my sons now there was repentance. Repentance had to be a piece of that. There had to be recognition I had done something wrong, and then there had to be a dispensation of the consequence of that. But then there had to be a restoration. And so that's one example when I looked at, okay, how do I be a better dad? Look at the way that, not the way I learned, but the way that God dealt with that. He doesn't carry as far as the east is from the west. That's what I knew about him. So how can I possibly carry something against my son if God has taken mine as far as the east is from the west? And so we would leave that room after the dispensation of the consequences and go play. I mean, it was over. And often we would be going down the hallway towards the delivery of those consequences. And they were taught that they could turn to me and they would say, "Can I have grace?"
Mm.
And there was, because, sometimes you blow it and you don't see the consequences for that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of times that I blew it and I deserve something worse.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't happen. I didn't get off the hook. I got grace.
Yeah.
I got grace. That was a decision of my Heavenly Father to say, you know what? You did. You really messed up, but you've repented. You've recognized that you messed up. And you know what?
Yeah.
I have the power to remove the consequence.
Wow.
And so as a dad, if he turned to me, there were times that it would you get a grace card. My wife would say, you get a grace card. Like
Sure.
part of you just got dealt a grace card. She actually wants to, someday produce these cards for families. You can pass out a grace. Here's a grace card. You get a grace card. So there were times when they were at the precipice of the delivery of that consequence, and they got a grace card. So they got a recognition of grace. They could ask for it. They could always ask for it, but you don't always get it. And that's really the definition of grace. It's unmerited favor.
Wow.
So there would be times that in that they would get unmerited favor that they didn't deserve. And then there would be other times they would get the consequences. But either way, we leave that room with our relationship restored. So there's a dad out there that we learn to parent our sons by the way that our dad parented us. But we need to make sure we're paying attention to the way that our Heavenly Father parents us, and we understand that through the Word of God. And it doesn't make sense to our natural mind because our natural mind was raised with something else. To think that my son would not be punished for something that I was aware of, he was aware of, and that he deserved punishment for, that doesn't sound right. I mean, they say you got to have the consequences. No, there aren't always consequences. Sometimes you get a grace card. And that thing to say, go to your room and think about how bad you've been. My gosh, the years that I carried this guilt over stuff when God had been like, man, as far as we're done with that, we're over that. Let's go throw the ball around.
Right.
So we have to take that posture. We have to understand that we have a perfect Heavenly Father, and we blow it all the time. My kids, they're going to need therapy. No question. I didn't get it all right. But there's a couple things that we figured out and they work. So I would just encourage them, this is reachable, it's doable, you have what you need. God doesn't withhold from you what it is that you need in order to accomplish what he's called you to do as a father. You have every piece of that. Some of it's retraining, some of it's getting around other men to figure out how they do it. Find yourself a company of good and godly men, Christ-centered, male-centric environment where you can watch other dads at work and pick up hints from them on how to do that. You can ask them questions. You're not alone. You're not an island. You do have a community that God calls us to. Find that community of men who can show you. We don't do real well sitting at a table across, drinking a cup of coffee face to face. We do really well side by side, turning a wrench or going on a hike or something like that. Find opportunities to be with other men where you're doing stuff side by side that has a purpose bigger than you are. And you'll get to witness the things that God's showing you on how to be a better dad.
Man, Mark, that's really powerful. And some dad needed to hear that, both for the way he's disciplining, but also the way he was disciplined, the way that happened. Discipline is an event. It's not a lifestyle.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It happens and it's over. Mark, thank you for joining us today. I want to remind the dad who's listening that if you need an environment where you want to invest in your sons, and or if you're at a place where you want to invest in someone else's sons, where you want to help out, go to traillifeusa.com and learn more about one of the most significant organizations in our country that is shaping the next generation. I love what Trail Life is doing. I'm a huge, hearty endorser, supporter, ministry partner, speaker, lover of the organization. And not just the organization, but the people in it. Mark, you're a good man. I appreciate what you do.
Way to go, Mark. Thank you for doing this.
Your staff you've surrounded yourself with has been amazing. And, our ministry is better off because of our partnership with Trail Life. Absolutely. No question. So I really appreciate you taking some time today to both talk about you personally and also your latest book, Raising Godly Boys, a proven process for growing boys into godly men. You can go snag that for free at the Trail Life USA website. Dad, no excuses. If you like this podcast and you want some more info or you need to get on track, there's resources, people, and opportunities for you to do that. Go check them out at traillifeusa.com and then join us back here next week for another scintillating episode of the Father on Purpose podcast. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today, brother.
Thank you, guys. Really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, Dad, thank you for listening to today's show. If you found this episode helpful, remember, you can get all the content and show notes at manhoodjourney.org/podcast. And if you really liked it, please consider doing 3 things. Number 1, share this podcast with someone. You can hit the share button in your app, wherever you listen to podcasts, or just call a person up and tell them to listen in. Number 2, subscribe to this podcast so you get episodes automatically. That helps us as well to help dads find the show. You can do that through your favorite listening app, whatever that is. And finally, review this podcast. Leave us a review, good or bad, wherever you listen. Those reviews also help other dads find the show. You can always learn more about what we're up to at manhoodjourney.org or fatheronpurpose.org. We will see you next week.
You've been dozing off to the Father on Purpose podcast featuring Kent Evans and Lawson Brown. Now, wake up. Head over to fatheronpurpose.org for more tools that can help you be a godly, intentional, and not completely horrible dad. Remember, you are not a father on accident, so go be a father on purpose.